There's a type of person who, when they have to choose how to move through the world, picks the most exposed option, the most vulnerable one, the one with no doors to protect them, no windows to block the wind, no body panels to separate them from whatever's happening outside. When that person is cold, they feel the cold. When it rains, they get wet. When they lean into a curve, their body tilts toward the pavement. And yet, they keep choosing it. Over and over, every single day. It's not recklessness, it's not ignorance, and it's not just a transportation preference. What you're about to understand says more about how a mind works than it does about how an engine works. When someone tells you they prefer a motorcycle over a car, the conversation almost always goes to the same place. Gas mileage, parking, weaving through traffic. Practical reasons, safe ones, easy to defend at the dinner table. But those reasons are the surface. And psychology rarely lives on the surface. The question no one thinks to ask is this: why would someone voluntarily choose to live with less protection? Why would someone prefer to be more exposed, more present, more in contact with everything around them? When the more comfortable alternative exists and is right there, the answer isn't in the motorcycle, it's in the mental architecture of the person riding it. There's something in the psychological profile of certain people that draws them, almost inevitably, toward this kind of experience. Something that has to do with how they process risk, how they need to relate to the world around them, and what it means to them to feel like they're in control. When someone starts riding a motorcycle regularly, something shifts in the way they perceive the world. That's not a metaphor. It's a real documented process with concrete effects on how the mind functions. A motorcycle doesn't allow for distraction. You can't ride while replaying yesterday's argument, mentally rehearsing tomorrow's meeting, or composing a reply to a text. The moment your mind drifts, your body pays for it. That trains something very specific: forced mindfulness. Radical presence in the here and now. Over time, that way of processing the environment becomes hardwired. The architecture of thought changes. People who've been riding for years develop a heightened ability to read their surroundings in real time. They anticipate, calculate, and prioritize information in fractions of a second. Their perception of space, time, and risk becomes sharpened in ways that people who live inside a sealed metal capsule rarely develop. It's not that riders are braver, it's that they've trained, without even realizing it, a way of thinking that most people never have a reason to build. In psychology, there's a concept called locus of control. It refers to how much a person believes their own actions determine what happens to them in life. People with an internal locus of control tend to feel like they're the ones steering their own fate. People with an external one feel like the environment, luck, or other people are calling the shots. Studies on motorcycle riders consistently show a lean toward the internal end of that spectrum. These are people who need to feel like they're in charge, like their decisions actually matter. And a motorcycle is, in that sense, the most honest environment that exists. Every micro decision carries an immediate, real consequence. There's no room for passivity. Then there's the relationship with risk. Behavioral science distinguishes between two broad types of people when it comes to danger: those who avoid it at all costs and those who have a calibrated tolerance for it. Not blind tolerance, conscious tolerance. A seasoned rider isn't someone who ignores danger. They're someone who has learned to coexist with it in a functional way, to evaluate it, to respect it without freezing up. This connects directly to decision-making under pressure. People who regularly face situations requiring fast responses develop what psychologists call adaptive thinking, the ability to make sound decisions with incomplete information in a short window of time with real consequences on the line. That's interestingly enough, one of the most sought-after traits in high-performance environments, far away from any road. And there's a third element, maybe the most fascinating one: mindfulness, not as a spiritual practice, but as a survival requirement. The motorcycle forces the mind to be wherever the body is, and that, repeated over years, leaves a mark. With all of this on the table, what kind of person emerges? We're not talking about a stereotype. We're talking about a cluster of traits that tend to show up together more often than you'd expect in people who make riding their default way of moving through the world. independence. Not as a rejection of others, but as a genuine need to not require the environment to feel okay. These tend to be people who can make decisions on their own without needing external validation to move forward. Situational confidence. Not the arrogance of someone who thinks nothing bad can happen to them, but the functional confidence of someone who knows that if something goes wrong, they have the resources to respond. It's earned confidence, not assumed. Tolerance for uncertainty. A motorcycle puts you every single day in an environment you don't fully control. The weather shifts, traffic is unpredictable, the road surface isn't always what it looks like. Living with that over years builds a different relationship with what can't be known ahead of time. And maybe the quietest trait of all, presence. The ability to actually be in what's happening right now, without mentally checking out, without numbing yourself to it. But there's something psychology doesn't quite capture, because it belongs to a different register, the register of memory and identity. Ask someone who's been riding for years what their most vivid memory on a bike is. Almost never will they tell you about speed or technique. They'll tell you about an October morning on a road they'd never been on before, about what the air smelled like right after it rained, about a curve that came out perfectly and they couldn't quite explain why, about what it felt like to arrive somewhere having truly been present for every mile of the way. For many people, the motorcycle becomes the place where they're most themselves, not the place they escape their life, the place where they live it more fully. An identity gets built there, in that space of chosen vulnerability. That's hard to find anywhere else. The freedom they feel isn't freedom to go anywhere. It's the freedom to be someone without anyone watching, without anything to prove. There's a philosophy of life embedded in all of this. It's never written down anywhere. Nobody teaches it. But it surfaces naturally in people who've spent years choosing exposure over protection. It's the philosophy of someone who understands that total control is an illusion, that life doesn't happen inside a sealed capsule, that chaos exists, that risk exists, that things can go wrong, and that the response to that isn't to armor yourself, but to learn to move well inside the uncertainty. At its core, it's a stance toward existence, not the stance of the reckless person who doesn't value what they could lose, but of someone who has consciously decided that living fully requires being exposed. That absolute safety carries too high a price. The price of not feeling anything. Choosing a motorcycle in that sense is choosing to be present in your own life. Choosing contact over distance. Sensation over comfort. Now over the imaginary control of later. If something you've heard today resonates with you, if you've recognized in these words something you already knew but nobody had ever put into words before, this channel is probably for you. Here, we don't analyze behavior to judge it. We analyze it to understand ourselves. If you want to keep exploring why people think, feel, and choose the way they do, subscribe. Every video goes a little deeper. In the end, the motorcycle is just the example. What we've really been talking about is something much bigger. We've been talking about people who choose contact over isolation, presence over avoidance, the honesty of what's actually felt over the anesthesia of what's being avoided. People like that are everywhere, not just on bikes. People who prefer hard questions over comfortable answers, who'd rather live with what's real, like even when it's difficult, than protect themselves from it behind a pane of glass. The question isn't whether you ride a motorcycle or not. The question is, in what parts of your life have you chosen the glass? When deep down you knew you wanted the wind? Is there an area of your life where you know, somewhere deep down, that you're choosing protection over experience? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know.